Today, we will learn how to master 5-minute scalping. This is not a kind of video that you just put two indicators and long and short like crazy. I'll cover full trading examples from foreign exchanges and cryptocurrencies. You'll learn how to use multiple time frames at the same time and how to use entry strategies for 5-minute scalping. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course. We mainly focus on price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading or even swing trading, you are in the right place. Check out my free trading course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. Okay, let's check this AUD and US dollar pair. If you remember, I sent an analysis tweet about this pair and identified possible supply and demand areas, as I said right here. Do not force yourself to predict the price. Instead, focus on possible supply and demand areas. Once the price hits the level, just open lower time frames and look for market structure shifts. This supply area, basically the breaker block area, worked great. It also matches our range high area, a great point to look for shorts. Now, let's do it all over again. We are in the 2 hours chart. Why a 2 hours chart and not a 4 hours chart? There's no reason at all. I generally go over all the time frames and check for clear setups. First of all, our range is extremely clear here. Very clear. Just like I predefined on Twitter. If you ask me, the most important level of ranges is the EQ zone. I want the price to struggle a lot around the EQ or get rejected from the EQ. If you have a hard time identifying ranges, just use your Fibonacci or Gann tool. Just move it around as much as possible and the range will suddenly appear. EQ points and deviations are clear with this range. Let's focus on this area, the breaker block supply. Now, if the last candlestick is so tiny without body, you can use it with the previous candlesticks. But none of these matter. All you need to know, this is an overall supply area and you do not need perfect drawings. What else do we have here? Support and resistance flip. If you look closely, you can see how the price is being rejected from this level. Now check this break. It is so powerful. You can see how strong it is. It changes the flow of the uptrend here. Now let's focus on this area and open the 30 minutes time frame. You already understand the core of price action trading. We just identify high time frame supply and demand areas, and then we go deeper and deeper to find great trading setups. Now what do you see here on the left? Pause the video and tell me exactly. What is this? Yes, it is a drop-based drop, our classic supply area pattern. Now what do we have here? 2-hour breaker block supply and SR flip area, adding another layer of drop-based drop area. Just right below, you can notice an imbalance, another little price rejection structure. Furthermore, you can see how this previous swing high, giant weak liquidity, was taken before the counter movement. Remember, price seeks imbalance and liquidity to make a counter move in the opposite direction. Okay, let's open the 5-minute chart for scalping. But first, let's focus on this drop-based drop area. I'll be checking what is happening inside this base. We are in the 5-minute chart. From now on, we will work with quiz-based teachings. I want you to identify the break, imbalance, and the order block inside this drop-based drop. Here is our main break, the most significant break downwards. At the top, we have our order block. And right below it, we have our imbalance. There is also a very hidden structure here, BPR, Balanced Price Range. However, this is a future lesson. If you want to learn what BPR is, you can Google it and try to identify it by yourself. Okay, let's get back to the main chart. We will focus on this right part. From now on, I'll always try to cover the most recent trades on the markets. So you can open them on TradingView and practice by yourself. Now what do we have here? Oh man, look at this beauty. 2-hour breaker black. 30 minutes drop base drop. 30 minutes imbalance. 5 minutes order black. 5 minutes imbalance. 5 minutes BPR balanced price range. And the 2-hour range high zone. What else do you need to short this asset? It's just crazy. As you can see, there are at least 4 or 5 trade opportunities here that you can short with each break. But I'll focus on the main trades. First, you can see the considerable swing failure pattern right at the top. It is always great to confirm a stop loss hunt before opening a position. You can see this main break that changes the trend flow. Let's draw our premium and discount zone to identify the entries. You can see the imbalance right here. How the price is being rejected from the premium zone. What else do we have here? At the top, there is a fresh order block. And right below, there is another order block. So we have many areas to enter a trade, but how do we choose? Let's zoom out a bit, find possible targets before deciding how to enter. You can see the untaken liquidity areas below. And right below that, there is the main swing low. The most significant swing highs and lows, where the main liquidity waits for us. Do not forget this. Now let's look at this entry. Once the price is rejected from the EQ point and the imbalance, I would take this type of entry because the price is rejected very strongly from the imbalance and my stop loss would be the way top. I have to give myself a cushion, room to breathe, and protection for other supply areas. These are possibilities that I have to consider. What else can I do? I would send limit orders to each order block. I would divide my risk into smaller positions and increase my chances. Will it work? I have no idea. I do not care. I am not an oracle. How would I know? Knowing is not your job. Your job is analyzing setups and managing risk. That's it. Stop trying to predict things and being the next oracle in the matrix. Okay, let's quickly cover the Bitcoin trade that I took recently. As you know, we have been watching this range for a long time. Some people call this range a horrible price action because most of them have no clue about range trading. For me, this is a masterpiece. I will probably print this and hang it on my wall. Okay, let's get back to the trading. Let's focus on this specific part and look at how we traded this. Let's closely watch this 5-minute chart. Let's do things step by step. First, notice how these liquidities are being swept. Very clean and quick. And notice the forming liquidity below. Just another masterpiece. And the mega imbalance that waits for us at the bottom. Amazing engineering happening right here. Now, I draw my reverse Fibonacci here. Yes, it is reverse. Some folks ask me about this pattern and say, why is this Fibonacci reverse? Well, it is called reversed Fibonacci technique. And our secret pattern appears suddenly, the ROTE, reverse optimal trade entry based on Fibonacci. I will not go into every detail about it. You know the rest. Now what happens here? Price suddenly moves down, clearing all the liquidity and filling the imbalance below. And in a single second, it moves up. Why? Because this is the core inflation data release time. I'm actually quite against trading economic data, but I do it a lot just for fun with a really small amount of money. Because these events are quite unpredictable. Okay folks, I think this video clarifies how to master 5-minute scalping. I'll be covering so many day trading and scalping examples. Please stay tuned. You can use these strategies with Forex, crypto or stocks or anything that you want. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.